Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forecast Best Ball channel, and today we are going to be picking from the 12 pick on another underdog draft. We were just talking about how we wanted to be in the middle today because we've had a late pick and we've had a couple early picks, but here we are. We're going to be picking from 12.
And we were also talking about how we hate the 12th pick in the draft, but let's see what we can do. Let's go ahead and take a look at the board. Obviously, we're going to see pretty chalk through the first 6 or 7 picks, but looking at ADPs, we're going to be staring at probably Achane, Genty, Jefferson, Hampton. So where do you think you want to go to start things off?
You know, I love Achane, so if he's there, I think that there's few players that have as much upside as him. So I'm in on Achane at the turn if he's there, and then it just kind of gets muddied because do we really want Jefferson? Do we really trust him if it's still going to be JJ McCarthy? Do you think you bring somebody in at this point and then it kind of turns into a bargain? I think that's a risk that is going to be kind of surrounding him all year long. But I think that's probably where I would go amongst the rest of those guys there. I could see going Hampton, but I think getting a running back and a receiver would be good. Oh, and there goes Jefferson right before our pick. So maybe we double tap running back here then. So Achane for sure. And then between Genty and Hampton, I would lean Hampton just because I'm a Charger homer. But I think, that either way, you can't really go wrong between those two guys.
I think I have Hampton. I have to double check. It's either one spot ahead or one spot below Genty at this point. I actually have Achane behind both of them, not because I don't love Achane, just because I am worried that his target percentage with Tua was just so astronomical that, maybe that's not necessarily repeated with Ewers. Obviously, we saw that with a small sample size. Maybe they bring someone else in, but there's not a lot of options in terms of playmakers on Miami. It's really just Achane and Waddle, who are both electric and elite. We're 7 picks away. And one thing we have noticed is there's a decent amount of wide receiver, depth late in this draft. So maybe we go with, I don't want to say 0 wide receiver because in 3 wide receiver leagues, that's kind of a death sentence, but we'll see what the board gives us. I think if Kyron makes it to us, that's just going to be way too good of a value to pass up. Again, just criminally underrated year over year, just finishes top 10. People are bored with them.
Yeah, looking at the board here, these wide receivers are better than what we've been getting here with Higgins and McConkey and Wilson at the top. I think I would lean Garrett Wilson of that trio just because he is established. We don't know the quarterback yet. And if the quarterback is good, his ADP is going to go up from here. So that's one of those things where we're kind of anticipating a bad quarterback, but they were talking about maybe Carson Wentz is the preferred option there. That wouldn't be super great, but at least I think he would be okay getting the ball to Wilson. Is much better than Justin Fields or like a running quarterback would be in terms of his production. So I think that's the direction I would be going here.
I actually really like the way that fell to us. Ladd would have been my next pick. JMO, I just can't get behind JMO. I don't know. Last year, I was more down on him. Obviously, that was a little bit of a whiff, but just with and without Laporta, it's just the splits are just so different that I get he has that home run upside, but I don't know. He just scares me at this point in the draft.
You just can't get behind him, even though he's wide receiver 19 and then wide receiver 11. Like, he is in an elite offense. He's the number 2 passing option. And in best ball in particular, he has so much upside. Like, that's why he gets drafted here, though. I mean, he's absolutely worth the pick. There's a case to be made that he should be going ahead of that entire group, maybe up by McMillan, like a round-ish earlier. But, the downside case you said where he just doesn't do much, he'll have zeros, and that's just tough to deal with. But in best ball, it's a little bit easier to deal with maybe than in your season long.
And that's fair. That's fair. But I guess we haven't taken Ladd in any draft. Just as a Chargers fan, are we optimistic for a big bounce back?
I'm optimistic for a bounce back from McConkey, but yeah. I will say with the news surrounding that Tyreek Hill is maybe potentially in the running to join the Chargers, I'm a little scared of that. You get towards the end of the year, and if Tyreek is there and is going at full speed, it is just something where I feel like he'll warrant a lot of attention. McDaniels is obviously the offensive coordinator, would probably want to bring him in if it was an option. So until that gets settled, I'm a little bit hesitant on McConkey. I will say that I think McDaniels is going to be great for the offense and for McConkey. We did see him concentrate all of the wide receiver targets into one player. That kind of made Jalen Waddle like a secondary piece, and I think McConkey is going to be that guy.
We are 2 picks away. So what do you think here? I see your guy BTJ on the board. I know you're optimistic about him.
Yeah, I
So
am.
what do you think with this group here?
Yeah, I think BTJ is good. I might still lean Cortland Sutton over him. I just think that Sutton is pretty stable. And the fact that we don't have wide receivers yet in the draft, I think maybe going with a little bit of additional safety is probably a better way to go. Cortland Sutton coming off a huge year, and I don't really think a lot is going to be changing there. I think he's still going to be the number one, and I think he's definitely worth the pick. And then if we want to go back to running back, DeAndre Swift seems to be standing out pretty clearly. We could double tap wide receiver and just take the upside, or go with David Montgomery, somebody who just recently changed teams, who I currently have ahead of Swift, but we can go with Swift there. I didn't see David Montgomery. I wish that they would change the ranking and move him up quite a bit, because he should definitely be above running back 26 at this point. He should probably be in that running back 20 range.
Yeah, it's still pulling just based on ADP, and I'm surprised it hasn't climbed faster, but that'll continually increase. But I do like Swift. I know he's been kind of one of those guys the last couple of years again, where it's just like people were bored with him going into last year, and I love Manungai as well, but Swift has a very stable role in that offense, which is very solid. And now at this point, it's like we can feel very solid about our running back room. We can focus on other positions. We can grab a couple late, but I'm thinking for this build, this might be just like a 6 RB build. But we'll see how things kind of shake out. And then from a stacking perspective, Bo Nix is someone that we can look to pair with Cortland Sutton. If any of you guys have been listening to our main channel the last couple of years, I've been Mr. Anti-Bo Nix. I've been anti-Bo Nix since the moment he stepped on the field at Auburn. But I will say, I will recognize a good value when it's there, right? I mean, he's finished QB7 back-to-back seasons. And he, I believe, currently is like QB 13 or something like that. Let's see where his ADP is. QB 15. So 15, it's just like at this point, like I'm going to be buying there. Like I have no issues with that whatsoever.
Yeah. My only issue still with Bo Nix a little bit is Goff is the one going right behind him. So it's like, I don't know. I always love Goff. I always feel like he is just the easiest quarterback pick there is. Like he's going to stay healthy. He's on an elite offense. He's got all kinds of weapons, and finishing outside of the top 10 for him is almost a challenge. And he hasn't done it in the last 4 years. So, I think that that's the one guy maybe, but, Bo Nix at 15 is much more palatable than at 7 when we were kind of talking about him all last offseason.
Oh, yeah. And I'm still going to have Goff ranked ahead of Nix. However, I'm looking at that from a stack perspective. And if we do end up taking is Laporta still? Yeah, so Laporta is still available. So if we go with Laporta, we can do a Goff, Nix, Sutton stack there too. But we are coming back around here. So looking at the board, Tootin, I think everyone's just hopeful Etienne's going to be gone. I can't get behind that. Michael Wilson, I'm not trusting that with a new quarterback.
No,
Mondre,
definitely not.
Thanks.
We're one pickup. We should probably look at tight end here. I would be into trying to grab a tight end here, because we might get shut out of the position entirely. So if you want to go Laporta, let's get him now. And then we should definitely hit wide receiver. We only have 2 so far, and we have 4 running backs. So let's see what that position presents to us. And, Stephon Diggs is interesting on where he will land, but I think Jacoby Myers has a decent chance to at least be the predominant wide receiver in Jacksonville, with Brian Thomas Jr. down the field, or, his situation is just kind of up in the air. So I think that this is a good opportunity to get Myers. And, we love Myers just throughout the years. So he's in a much more crowded room, but I think that offense is better. Liam Cohen showed that he liked using him full offseason to get fully integrated into the offense. And I think Myers is going to be good.
Yeah, trade for him and re-sign him pretty quickly. And like you said, he's going to be on the field a ton. He's the consummate professional. He doesn't drop the ball. So, you can never do bad by drafting Jacoby. So I feel like that elevates our floor here a little bit. And so looking ahead, looks like Ramondre, Manungai went, and we see Herbo and Dart. Dart's going to be an interesting one to see where he ends up settling in at ADP come August. He's one of those guys that in very early preseason rankings I saw shot up as high as, like, I think one of the CBS guys had him at like QB 3 or 4 or something like that.
Probably
and it's like probably. And I love Dart, and I think maybe a lot of that has to do with how Drake May finished year one and went into year two, but that one's still a little bit rich for my blood.
Let's not compare Drake May to Jackson Dart.
I'm just drawing a parallel here. If someone's
Drake
pushing
May
him up to
is
3,
a much better passer than Jackson Dart. He has a much higher draft capital. I understand they're both first round picks, but yeah, I think I get what you're trying to do, but
yes.
The rushing is really what's going to carry Dart, right? But it does warm my heart a little bit to see him go as quarterback 11, and it does warm my heart a little bit to see Drake May going as QB 6, because that's more where I was thinking about having him. And like initially in the offseason, we're talking about Drake May as quarterback 2, and we're talking about Jackson Dart as 6 or 7, and I'm like, those are just so rich for my blood. But seeing them get knocked down into that range, I do think he's going to be interesting to follow as the 11th quarterback taken, just because I do think there is a situation where he's a top 5 quarterback, but I think there's also a situation where the bottom falls out a little bit if that rushing does not hit the peak that we think it can.
Yeah, and I guess I'll hold that thought until after this pick, but we still have no, dude, we lost Goff and Bo Nix.
We missed the stack. We were going to go with both of them here, but I mean, there's still Baker and Stafford. We don't get the stack, but those guys are still very good. So I think we can go with one of those two, whichever you prefer. I prefer Stafford. I think you prefer Baker. But overall, I think that's a totally fine consolation prize. And then if you want to go with Juwan Jennings to try and kind of hit on another wide receiver in this area that I think is very good, and I don't think Ayuk is coming back to the team. And so pending a first round draft pick, but even if there is a first round draft pick, I don't know. It kind of depends on who it is.
Well, Jennings is a free agent too, so he might not be there. That's the problem.
That's my point. Is I think they're going to try and bring him back though, pending a first round pick, right? Like that seems like it's not a situation that they can just have Ayuk be out the door and lose Jennings and then like rely on all rookies. I don't know. It feels like it's a natural fit to have him come back.
And, we've seen him explode in games before too. So,
exactly. Yeah.
There's always that option. And San Francisco just doesn't, with Kittle being injured, it's like they just need weapons. So I could see it, but also where they're positioned in the draft, we'll see if they go wide receiver. We texted our buddy who's a Niners fan, asking for his input, and he's Mr. Gray Skies, so he's like, "Oh, it's probably going to be something, whatever." I was like, "Okay, dude, thanks for your help."
Yeah, maybe that's the team that told Lemon to tank all of his interviews. Just be like, "All right, we're going to try and take you at the end of the first." So
it could be.
Just go around and tell everybody that you're a scumbag so that we can get you.
Yeah, it could be. My response was it's going to be Casey Concepcion, and he's not going to be very good. He's going to be Malachi Corley, but
oh my gosh, that is a horrible comp.
I don't know why I'm not in on Concepcion's electric, but I don't know. I'm just getting Kadarius Toney vibes.
Yeah, no, it's so funny. If that comes true, we're gonna have to roll that clip back. We see there he goes right there too. We see Jalen Coker go in the middle of the 10th round, and that's a lot more aggressively drafted than we've seen. But he did just get tagged, so I think the Panthers probably have big plans for him, and hopefully he can stay healthy this year. He came into the season last year hurt, never really got quite right, but with another year plus health, I think there's something to be said for Coker in that offense.
All right, so we are 7 picks away now. We only have one quarterback. Darnold goes off the board. So at this point, we're looking at Mendoza, Stroud, Bryce, Ward. So I don't know if you want to grab one now and which of those you see best fit, just so we don't get completely shut out, and we can take a third one later.
Yeah, my opinion would be to go with Stroud. And there he goes. So naturally, right? And then can you put the quarterbacks up there again? Because other than Mendoza, nobody really stood out. Yeah, we could take a flyer on Young or Ward, Daniel Jones, if we think he can be healthy. But I think Mendoza is probably the pick if we want to go quarterback there.
Okay, we'll highlight Mendoza. We'll star Bryce. Not in on Bryce, but 3 times a year he looks really good. So we can use him those weeks, I guess.
Yeah.
It's just a bummer we got shut out of Baker, but let's go Mendoza here. And then looking back at the wide receiver position, what do you think about Dobbs? We don't know where he's going to end up, but do you want to go that route?
Yeah.
Do you want to go? Okay.
I'm good with Dobbs. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm decently hopeful that he's off the Packers for Matthew Golden and just that wide receiver room's
Yeah.
outlook. But if he does go somewhere else, we do know that he can earn targets, and that I think regardless of where he's at, he's going to be playing a lot, right? That was always kind of our complaint slash not really able to work around in the Packers room, is that he's just always on the field. He was like a 90% snap share, 85% snap share guy. And so wherever he goes, I think that's going to be the case. It would be excellent to see him go to a place where, again, he could get a lot of targets. I don't know that Cleveland is necessarily like a great place to land, but I think he could be the one if he was there. Again, I'm not even entirely sure where else, because Buffalo just kind of solved their wide receiver issue.
I think if
but he
Jennings
can still be good there too.
If Jennings moves on, I think Dobbs can be an interesting one for San Francisco.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
I mean, just to get a veteran presence, right? Like some stability.
Yeah. He gets open too, and Purdy is able to thread the needle very well. So I could see that being a solid pairing too. I just, like I said, when we picked Jennings, I just have a really hard time believing that he's going to move on. So again, I'm not entirely sure where that huge wide receiver market is currently within the NFL. And so, for a guy like Jennings, it feels like San Francisco is just the best spot that he could possibly land.
And back-to-back drafts with Fernando Mendoza, the Heisman winner.
Yep.
So hopefully good things ahead. And I am curious your take on this. I was thinking about this the other night. In my opinion, the Heisman is the single greatest honor in all of sports, right? Other than like, I'm not counting like winning a green jacket. I'm talking like MVPs or Cy Youngs or Player of the Year. What do you think about that?
I mean, you're a college football homer. That's what I think about that.
But let's talk through this. Let's talk through this.
Yeah, I guess we can. I don't agree with that. I think maybe it is prestigious just because of it's the narrowest window in sports of one of the popular sports that you have to win it. Really, it's only a 2-year window that you can basically be considered. I wish that the Heisman, I guess I just have a problem with the Heisman because I wish it was a little bit more geared towards or away from quarterback. I think it's become so quarterback centric. And I know I think that's fair. Travis Hunter. I know we saw Travis Hunter win it, but this year, like Mendoza didn't deserve it. That was the thing. I think it could have easily gone to a defender this year because Mendoza just didn't have the eye-popping stats to back up being the number one or the number one player for that award. So, and I get that it's Indiana and that I get the context. I get that it's an undefeated season, all that stuff. But I don't know. I wish it would have gone to a defender. I think that could have been a cool thing to see in a year where quarterbacks were down, but that didn't end up happening. Let's come back to this after these picks. Jonathan Brooks, and then I think we could get our last our last running back here if you wanted to go with Charbonnet. I think that's an interesting. They let Ken Walker go, so Charbonnet, there's a decent chance that once he's healthy, he is going to be the guy in Seattle. I mean, they're definitely going to bring in somebody else, if not Walker. But at that value, it feels like Charbonnet can really pop if he does come back healthy second half of the season type of pick.
I like that. And, we can put the X on the running back position now unless we see something crazy late. But I definitely agree with what you're saying about the window. I think that to me adds a big piece of the prestige because, the other argument would be like an NFL MVP and it's like, Stafford finally got his, right? But that window is pushing 20 years. And with the defender aspect, I think that's a great point because, they say it's the best player in college football, but that's not always the case. And I always think back to that Texas game versus Nebraska when it was Colt McCoy and Ndamukong Suh was so clearly the best player in college football. It wasn't close. Right.
Yeah,
so I'm with you there. I'm with you there. And when you look at this year with, the guys on Texas Tech defensive line, you look at Miami's players, it was a down year overall for the skill position players, 100%. And I think maybe there would have been a little bit more of a narrative around that had Indiana not finished so strong and had, a lot of those comebacks and Heisman moments. But, and then drawing a parallel to baseball, like I prefer the Cy Young versus the MVP in baseball, but there's multiple rewards to go around. But anyways, we can pick that up.
The Cy Young in baseball is an interesting one too, because it matters so much for legacy and because you never truly know who's going to win it. There's only there's less than 40 pitchers who have have gotten it twice.
Yeah.
And so, it's a very prestigious award. My take on the Cy Young is that if you win it twice, it should be an auto bid into the Hall of Fame. I can't believe that there are guys that have two that didn't get into the Hall of Fame, like Tim Lincecum not getting into the Hall of Fame to me is such a joke. Like, I understand that he was cooked by the time he was 28 or whatever, 29, but we always knew he was going to be a bright star based on the delivery and based on his size. Like, it's just not,
Yeah.
he was not built for longevity, but the fact
No.
that he won two Cy Youngs and 3 World Series just seems ridiculous. Actually, I think he only won 2 of the World Series, but I think it's just kind of ridiculous that somebody that had a bright star that's shown that bright, I guess is what I should be saying, just doesn't end up in the Hall of Fame. I think is laughable. So that's why I knock the Cy Young Award specifically, is because it holds this incredible weight season to season. And if you win one, it's like incredible. You end up on the Hall of Fame ballot. Like Rick Porcello makes his way onto the Hall of Fame ballot this year, and that's a complete joke because he was terrible. But he had the Cy Young year, so he makes it onto the ballot. And so I do think that award maybe holds a little bit more weight than MVP. But MVP is also this weird thing in baseball where it's like there's one guy that everybody's always chasing, right? In the NL, it's Shohei. In the AL, it's Aaron Judge. And like, though that can happen for 4 or 5 year windows. And it was Mike Trout, in the 10 years ago when he started winning MVPs, and it was just he was in the top 2 or 3 every single year. So we're chasing those guys, and I see you pick A.D. Mitchell. I love the Torrey Horton pick, so we can clock those 2 guys. We've talked about those 2 in our other drafts as well. So we're continuing to pick our favorites down here in round 15 and 16.
Definitely staples in the rotation thus far. Didn't see anything I loved out of the tight end position. I guess we could have gone with Dalton Schultz. I think Hawk is kind of cooked. Njoku, we don't know where he's going to go.
Is Hawk cooked, or was he cooked by JJ McCarthy? Because is Jefferson cooked?
No, but I don't know. It just, I don't know.
I think it was a McCarthy thing, dude. I think because he was great with Darnold the year before.
Yeah, but it seems so much easier to, I don't know,
to write him off. I know it is easier to write him off, but I wouldn't be so quick, I guess, is my only point, to write off Hawkinson, especially if their quarterback is going to be different. I think that's going to be a glaring value down in this area. I would rather have Dalton Schultz. I don't understand the ranking of Dalton Schultz at all. I can't figure it out. Somebody drop a comment below if you can figure out why Dalton Schultz is tight end 24, other than just fatigue. But even safe, if you think it's fatigue, just say that. But like, he was a top 10 tight end this year. The weapons aren't going to be changing. It's still going to be Stroud. He's still going to be the predominant middle of the field target. He literally kept Jalen Noel off the field. Christian Kirk was hurt, so maybe with Kirk coming back, that's going to hinder Schultz. I can't figure it out. He seems like a glaring value down here at this point in the draft, honestly, at tight end to me.
Yeah, we'll have to target him in some of the next ones here. But we are 10 picks away. Mason Taylor, we've talked about him a lot, could be the number 2 in this offense. Oh, God, we already have A.D. Mitchell and Garrett Wilson. So we could take every Jet.
We almost did that last draft, too. Let's get away from the Jets. Let's not do that.
Yeah, last draft we took every Saint.
Is Tyler Higbee there? Let's maybe wait and try and take Tyler Higbee, because he just signed a new contract. So, they gave him a 3-year deal, or 2-year, $20 million, 10-year. Yeah. I don't know exactly what the contract was, but he did just re-sign.
I don't know. It's Higbee, Preferred, Parkinson. They're always out there. They all look the same, and you cheer for one, and it's thrown to the other, and it's just frustrating.
Vele went, dude. We got sniped on Vele.
He's moving up. That 1 week where everyone started Parkinson, including myself, and he was just set to explode.
5 straight touchdowns. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like, I think, was it Devontae was out or something? And then he had like 1 catch or something. It was it was madness.
So disappointing. We could go with another quarterback here too. I think, with Mendoza, we obviously have Stafford, but I think maybe getting in on another quarterback is probably a good idea here. I know you're worried about Rodgers, so maybe we avoid him, but maybe Richardson, maybe Jacoby Brissett. It sounds like Brissett maybe is going to start in Arizona.
I mean, if he does, he was top 10 or top 12 every week, right? Except maybe week 18 or something. So
I don't think they build the same offense. I don't think they're going to chuck it 40 times. So, maybe a little more modest than that. But I think at this point in the draft uh, with Mendoza being a question mark, I think it's maybe worth a shot. That percent is able to keep the job.
I'm okay with that. I mean, Arizona's clearly looking toward the future, and they're not going to find that answer in this draft. So unless they bring
Yeah.
someone else in to
Mason
replace
Taylor
him,
here, right? We got 12 seconds. Mason Taylor, I think we're still
it
going to
just
go.
seems like
We're going to get
the
cursed
way
with
to
all
go.
the pass catchers. Yeah. And the thing is if you take the Jets like this and they end up with a quarterback that's better than we're expecting, this can work out really well. We talk about this in the offseason for our redraft leagues, that getting in on on teams that are viewed as bad offenses can be a blessing sometimes if they are just even middle of the pack or top of the bottom third. If they're in that 20 to 23 range amongst offenses and they're getting viewed as like the absolute worst offense, that's when you can get a lot of value. It happened with Tampa Bay in Baker's first year, like Mike Evans and Godwin and Baker and Otton and Rashad White. All of those guys were pushed down outside the top like 7 rounds. Mike Evans, it was the lowest he ever got drafted in his career. And so mining that sort of team is not always the worst thing. Now, do I suggest that you do what we did and go in on the Jets? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that don't shut off players just because they're on terrible offenses, because there is pathways for teams to get better in the NFL. And that's a huge thing, right? That the NFL can change so quickly. I mean, we saw it with Washington when they got Jaden Daniels. We saw that with New England last year. We've seen it with, time and time again. Like, when was the last time, we saw a 20-year stretch where the NFC East division title winner wasn't even the same team. So, there's just a lot of, as much as the who's competing for Super Bowls doesn't have a lot of parity in the NFL, who's actually good year to year, who actually is in contention for the playoff picture year to year, actually does have quite a bit of parity in the NFL.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And, one of the screaming values last year that was on a bad team that ended up finishing really strong was Chris Olave. And, I had him like 10 spots above ADP, partially because of fandom. And I think he's a great player, but like, there's always, that opportunity. And looking at the Jets specifically, with so many picks, they might take one of the day 2 quarterbacks that, like Tyler Shuck, can outperform expectations. Like at this time last year, it was like, we can't wait for Nussmeier. We can't wait for Drew Aller. Like, one of those guys is going to get picked, and one of those guys is going to have an opportunity to play. I'm not saying it's going to work out. I'm partial to Aller. I still believe he just makes three. He makes 3 plays a game, 2 or 3 plays a game where you're like, holy cow, that is an NFL quarterback. And then he makes a lot of mistakes. That's a big boy throw. But anyway, so I think we're good on the running backs for sure.
What do you think about maybe going Tonjes here, right? Let's get off to a hot start at tight end. We have 2 already, and we do have Laporta, who is solid, should be a good option. But Tonjes should get you off to a hot start here if Kittle isn't ready to start the year. We obviously don't know that at this point, but I think if you want to get a third tight end this late, Kittle's not the epitome of health either. So once he is back on the field, it's not like he's guaranteed to finish the season. So I do like that pick down here. And then
we got to make a pick. Wide receiver.
Yeah. Just go with Mooney.
Just so it doesn't auto draft. He just got released today, but
he got released. So, maybe there's a situation where he can go to be the number 2 or 3 somewhere, more likely the number 3. But if he lands in a good situation, I still think he has decent talent. I mean, he's still somebody that one of our league mates like would not drop all year long. So it's like he's probably was on a lot of your waiver wires, but maybe we see him, or I see him a little better than he is, because he's just never available in the leagues I play in. We saw him be the number 1 in Chicago there for a while, and we saw him be good in Atlanta. So I still think the player himself is still solid.
And he was hurt too. I mean, the nice thing about Mooney is he's on the field like 90% of the time too. So even though he wasn't at his best by any means, if he gets healthy and is on the field a ton, there's always that opportunity. But why don't you take us home here with a run through of our team? Maybe we can look back at the board, see what we would have done differently. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so we had 3 quarterbacks, we had 6 running backs, 8 receivers, and 3 tight ends. And so I do think the quarterbacks, do we have 7 wide receivers?
No, we had 8. 8. Yeah.
So the quarterbacks, I think we could have done better at quarterback. I think that's something that we've been lacking in our drafts so far, and that's something that we should probably try to prioritize earlier, maybe by identifying some running backs later that we like, or some receivers even deeper that we like, and can fill
Mhm.
out those positions after we get two at each one, because that's all you really have to start. Mendoza, Brissett. I mean, Brissett could be solid, which could be our saving grace for this team.
Yeah.
But overall, I think quarterback needs to start being at least a touch more of a priority, get a top 10 guy. Our running backs are as solid as you will find, I think, for having the 12th pick. Achan, I love him. I think he's got all the upside in the world, and I think he can be a top 5, if not top 3 running back. Hampton, he's the wild card, right? He's going to be in that
Yeah.
McDaniels offense that we saw Achan flourish in. If he stays healthy and he gets all the work, I think he could also have a top 10 finish pretty easily. Um, and even push that top 5. Garrett Wilson and Sutton, I think, is our top 2 wide receivers. They're both very talented, and I think provide a pretty stable floor. Kyron, obviously, ideally, he'll be in our flex most weeks. He is going to be splitting a little bit with Corum. I think that's why his draft position's getting pushed down to running back 17, but we're going to scoop up that value all day long. And then Swift, we maybe could have, should have gone with David Montgomery. He was the next running back picked around later, but we both like Swift quite a bit there in Ben Johnson's offense, playing. Even though Monungai is going to be getting work, I don't think Swift is going anywhere. It's not like it's at the expense of Swift. It's more to complement Swift. Thank goodness we got a tight end a little earlier with Sam Laporta. That was very nice. And I'm going to be very partial towards trying to get a top 10 one, so we don't get Mason Taylor as our top tight end on any other teams. And then running through this part of the draft, this has my fingerprints all over it right here. Jacoby Myers, love him as a third option at receiver, and if you can get him as a fourth or a fifth, I think that's also still something that I'd be looking to do. Matt Stafford, great top end quarterback. He's going as quarterback 14, but we just saw him come off an MVP season. I don't think he's going to throw quite so many touchdowns, but Devontae Adams is still there, so there's going to be a lot of 1 yard or goal line touchdowns to be had through the air. Jennings, hopefully he resigns. Mendoza, hopefully he can do okay behind that awful offensive line. Dobbs, we'll see where he lands. Hopefully he lands in a situation where he can get targets. Jonathan Brooks, one of our favorite sleepers. He's coming off of back-to-back ACL tears, but he's very good and very explosive. And so we haven't really seen him too much on the NFL field, but I think if he comes into camp healthy, that this is going to be the year that we can see him break out and take over the job there. Charbonnet, injury, so he's going to get pushed down, but we'll take that this late in the draft. A.D. Mitchell and Torrey Horton, both young upside plays, probably going to step into number 2 wide receiver positions, ideally, on their teams this year. And if that happens, these two are going to be much better than these draft spots, in my opinion. Jacoby Brissett, we talked about quite a bit. I think he's a solid third to round out the quarterback position. And then Mason Taylor and Tonjes. Tonjes should get you off to a hot start. Mooney at the end there, just kind of a dart throw.
Awesome. Well, that was a good draft. I enjoyed that. This one felt like it went a little bit quicker than the other ones. I guess people are just kind of doing this on their lunch break. But anyways, anything else to add before we sign off?
Yeah, probably went a little quicker too, because we had a couple other aside type of conversations. I like that. So let's do that moving forward too. All right. With that, have a good one, you guys. Hope to see you in the next one, and talk to you soon.